If something doesn't seem right to you, if it doesn't add up, if it doesn't make sense, that's probably because it isn't right, it doesn't add up, and it doesn't make sense. We live in an era now where you're supposed to ignore the obvious glaring realities of life. We're told that printing billions of pounds is cost-free and won't cause inflation. We're told a flimsy mask, standing 6 feet apart or leaving the pub an hour early will stop a respiratory virus. We're told that segregation and focusing on skin colour will somehow stop racism when that used to be considered the very cause of racism. We're told you can change your biological sex and that a man born without breasts can breastfeed, and that he should participate in female sport and be accommodated in a woman's prison if she, her, has been a naughty girl. I could go on, you know how mad the world has become. But in these troubled times, we've got to swallow this stuff, and if we decide to call it out, to draw attention to reality, or even just to quote data, we're a bad person. We're guilty of misinformation, and we should shut up and go away. I think this quote from George Orwell pretty nicely sums it up. He famously wrote, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." Which takes me to electric cars. You have to make quite the mental leap to take the view that electric cars are good for the environment. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that petrol and diesel gas guzzlers are good either, absolutely not. But to say that manufacturing a new Tesla is somehow good for the planet compared to keeping a 10-year-old Volkswagen Passat that you've already got is plain ridiculous. Frankly, it's taking the Passat. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. Has it not occurred to anyone that these electric cars, replacing perfectly functional petrol and diesel cars that already exist, require a massive amount of energy to be produced? All of the metal, all the plastic, all of the rubber. The factories that make them, the shipping of these cars around the world, and then there are the batteries. Useless after a few years and financially ruinous to replace. One chap I know was quoted £13,000 for a new battery on the Nissan Leaf. These batteries are wildly toxic, extraordinarily polluting, and hard to recycle. There are people still driving around in 20 and 30-year-old cars quite happily. Well, that's not possible with electric vehicles, so you're looking at buying a new one every few years. That's more production, more factories, more resources, more pollution. The batteries themselves are comprised of precious, finite minerals, which will run out. People rightly draw attention to the horrors of slavery in the past, but no one seems to be giving a flying Ford Fiesta about current, ongoing slavery, with children and teenagers standing in freezing mud in the Congo for up to 12 hours a day, mining for the lithium that goes into the electric cars that you drive around in London or Manchester that make you feel like such a good person. Electric cars are far more expensive than petrol and diesel cars, so the ideology of net zero once again punishes the poorest in our society. Don't forget, Sky News presenters think that poor people don't drive cars at all. Get out of London, dear. You might learn a thing or two. You can't use the heater or air conditioning without running the battery down on these things. Where are the charging points? And then, of course, there is the famous range anxiety, where anything other than a trip to your local Tesco's is consumed with the abject terror that you won't make it. Even The Guardian offer a note of scepticism in their paper this weekend, with drivers who ditched petrol and diesel cars to help save the planet facing huge prices in insurance premiums. With one chap that they interviewed, who'd previously paid around £1,000 a year to insure his Tesla, was sent a quote for £5,000 and told to like it or lump it. These cars are expensive to repair, particularly after a collision. They're heavy, which is bad news for multi-storey car parks. And on the rare occasions that the battery can explode and the extra weight causes higher emissions from the braking and the rubber shedded from the tyres, you have to wonder, what is the point? This is me and my Prius. It's an old car, but it still works. Why can't we have one of those? This push for electric cars is ideological. They have a role to play, absolutely, but the crazy rush to get everyone into electric cars by a week next Thursday doesn't add up, environmentally or economically. It's time to pull the plug on this failed experiment of electric vehicles.